The WTO claims to be a forum for trade negotiation.
A new global constitution.
A process whereby the consensus of the Quad is imposed on the majority.
Is an organization that does not serve the interests of
That this isn't really about trade between countries.
Hi, I'm Walden Bellio, and I've been working on the World Trade Organization for some time now, along with many other people. And I'm here to tell you why the World Trade Organization is bad for you. But first, what is the WTO?
What is the WTO?
The WTO is
The World Trade Organization.
WTO essentially was set up to coordinate the economic activities of rich countries along with the multinational corporations.
the WTO is literally based in Geneva.
The WTO covers a whole range of areas, and I think this is one of the important things about it, is it's an extremely big organization.
An organization that composed with more than 140 countries.
The World Trade Organization was only created recently in 1995 to enforce a whole number of treaties. The main one being a thing called GATT, the General Agreement on
Tariffs and trade are now one of 23 different agreements that the WTO enforces.
The WTO claims to be a forum for trade negotiations, but in fact it is being turned into an instrument to control all countries throughout the world, not only through trade, but through trade-related agreements.
And each of our governments have people there theoretically representing us, but actually not really.
And we the people, trade unions, peasant organizations, just average people, we have no seat at the table.
The WTO is an international institution which has been put together by the imperialists to actually impose trade rules on the world.
It's only the interests of big corporations and banks that are represented. And what they are saying is that money values should rule over life values, that human rights and the environment should be subordinated to the needs of commerce. And that's just wrong.
So the big secret about the WTO is some people call it a trade agreement, but that just isn't accurate because the binding provision of the WTO requires all countries shall conform their domestic laws, regulations, and administrative procedures to the WTO agreements.
The WTO is kind of like a noose around the neck of human rights, of environmental stewardship, of people's right to health care and to safe jobs and housing and education.
What the WTO does essentially is the WTO places rules on governments, which mean that they can no longer regulate corporations. WTO is the place where company can use to escape the law of each country, including their own countries.
So what that means practically is that this isn't really about trade between countries, but it's about handcuffs on what policies our governments can put in place at home on a huge array of issues, from who controls basic services like water and electricity.
Well, I think it's really important that people not only look at the World Trade Organization as a trade regime, but I think it's really important we understand it as a new global constitution.
This is the final level of constitutional development.
And all of these is a one-size-fits-all set of rules at the WTO that all the countries are supposed to meet.
And the problem is, of course, is that the WTO has enforcement mechanisms. It can force governments to abide by that global economic constitution.
And the WTO has rules that stick. So when governments go back on or try and change the rules of the WTO,
they can be faced with escalating economic sanctions. So in other words, there is a whole system of economic punishment built into it.
The WTO's concern is only one way. It's only to privatize, to deregulate, to let the corporations come in, and citizens have basically become the enemy of the WTO because we're standing in the way.
Well, it's a trade organization, but it's not a fair trade organization, so, well, I don't know how much I will say about it.
that's WTO.
What is democracy? Well, democracy, as we know, is individuals, choose their rulers, and that the majority are the ones that are the decision makers. Given this criterion, the WTO is one of the most undemocratic organizations around. Although it is supposed to be a multilateral organization that runs on one country, one vote, in fact, the last time a vote was taken in the GATT WTO was in 1959. Now what you have is a process called consensus, and this is really a process whereby the consensus of the Quad, which is Canada, Japan, the United States, and the EU, is imposed on the majority.
The WTO to me is like a place where traders come and negotiate their trade. It cannot be a democratic forum because major traders certainly have more power than the smaller traders. It's an illegitimate forum.
It says World Trade Organization. It's true that it incorporates with very large membership, but at the same